This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. Are you well? Did you miss us? Well, we're back with White Plains Week, and so is Peter Katz, the anchor for all seasons, with the headlines. Peter.
You bet, John, and the stories for the week ending January 6, 2018, the day we are recording. They're here. Red light cameras go live in White Plains at 6 locations. So as you run a red light, you better smile because you're on camera. Parking rates go up in White Plains. You're being charged more for convenience parking at meters on the streets. The rates stay the same in garages and municipal lots. It's now going to cost you $1.25 to park at a meter downtown. White Plains demonstrates against taking children from immigrant families crossing the border. Common Council approves a site plan for the new second Winbrook Tower. It's only the second building of 5 to be replaced. The project started about 11 years ago. And we will see how fast this proceeds. They have to tear down one building before they can build a new one. Common Council gives go-ahead for White Plains Mall to rebuild the Good Counsel Housing Project. A public hearing remains open, and it'll be taken up again in August. Pace Women's Justice Center opens a new walk-in legal rights clinic. The district attorney of Westchester announces apprehension of a Valhalla man and charges him in 2016 in a hit-and-run accident in White Plains. County executive opens the North Boardwalk officially at Playland, Rye, New York, USA. That's the boardwalk that was devastated in a storm many years ago. And John Bailey takes us on a tour of France's Bordeaux wine region. Do you have your bottle openers ready?
Yes, get out, pop those corks. John Bailey, I want to mention that Jim Benneroff is on assignment, but...
I understand he's being interviewed for a Supreme Court position. Did you hear that?
You know, that would be great for him. It really would be, yes. Yeah. Now, let's go to the White Plains Week video newsreel March of Time.
There it is. Intersection, Bryant and Mamaroneck. And if you look closely, right next to that gas station, you're going to see a white pole. There it is. And those are, oh no, red light cameras. Oh no.
Please.
Help.
Mercy. Mercy. So, anyway.
You run a red light, get caught by the camera, $50 fine. For the first month, you just get a warning notice.
It's an amnesty month. It's amnesty month, okay? Now, here's the red light apparatus, a shot of it, close up, and then here's the red light warning sign for it. So these are really small.
Yeah,
but that's all that's there.
The city was allowed to do 12 intersections under the pilot program here, and initially they have announced a half dozen where these are going to go into effect. Right. In some cases, it's not every direction that will be covered at each intersection. If you're going southbound on Mamaroneck Avenue at Bryant, that's what we just saw. Eastbound, Main Street at Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Northbound, Bank Street at Hamilton Avenue. Westbound, Hamilton Avenue at Bank Street. westbound Westchester Avenue at South Kensico Avenue, and southbound North Broadway at Hamilton Avenue.
Right.
So that's where these things are going in first.
And this is what you have to do. You have to stop before the stop line if you are into the intersection. And
Right.
a bit over, you are
Now, one
on
thing,
a candid camera.
one thing they didn't tell us is how long the yellow light will be at each intersection. We believe just slightly under 4 seconds will be allowed from the time it goes green to yellow until you have to stop. And if it's
Yes.
red and you then proceed into the intersection, sorry, fellas.
Yes, you work on it now, folks, before August 1st.
The other thing to keep in mind is that if you're going to make a right turn on red at an intersection that has a camera photo enforcement, you must come to a full stop and hold that full stop before you go into the turn. If your wheels are rolling as you're making a turn on red, you will get a ticket because you have not come to a complete stop.
Don't get caught in a roll, folks. Now, let's go to a very important demonstration.
Well, you know, my car thermometer was showing 95 degrees last Saturday at about 1 p.m. when people converged on the federal courthouse on Coropa Street to take part in the nationwide protests against the Trump administration's immigration policies. Now, the protesters weren't bothered by the heat, and speaking of the heat, there have been reports from some medical professionals of some of the children taken away from their parents being held in what the government calls cold rooms, where it's deliberately kept at 50 to 60 degrees, and the children are forced to lie on concrete floors with only a thin mylar sheet as a covering, no mattress on the floor. By one account, almost 90% of the children in one Texas facility were running fevers. Luckier ones have been removed from government warehouses and sent to institutions such as Children's Village and Dobbs Ferry. In fact, there are 4 institutions here in Westchester housing some of these immigrant children taken away from their families. Just yesterday, the Department of Health and Human Services was forced to admit that it doesn't know how many children it has in custody. It had said 2,045. Now it says the figure is fewer than 3,000, but it can't say how many. Some say it's really between 4,000 and 12,000 children being held by the government, because it turns out that the Trump administration actually began the policy of taking away children from their parents last year in a secret pilot program which started long before the so-called zero tolerance policy was announced by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The federal courthouse in downtown White Plains was the scene of one of the more than 700 nationwide demonstrations on June 30th against the Trump administration's immigration policies, which include taking away immigrant children. About 1,000 attended, with some opting for folk songs in the shade across the street from the courthouse. In addition to hearing from elected officials such as State Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins and White Plains Mayor Tom Roach, immigrant families spoke. They told of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, taking away family members who have yet to be heard from. A Westchester teenager, an American citizen, told of his father being taken away and sent to Alabama.
My name is Jefferson Arpey. I'm 15 years old. I am from Peekskill, New York, and my father was taken from me from ICE. It was a regular day, normal day. I was going to school. Around 7 o'clock, I got a call from him saying that he was detained. I cried. I couldn't concentrate in school. Everything changed for me. I just want my father back. If he gets deported, where I'm gonna go, I don't know if I can stay here. I don't know. That's why I worry so much for him, and I just want him back, for him to be with me.
Congressman Elliot Engel spoke.
We're sending a message not only in New York, but all across the country. We will not stop until those inhumane policies are changed once and for all. I went and visited a facility yesterday with some of my colleagues where some of the children in Westchester, where some of the children are being held. I went and I visited it. The place itself was a fine place. But you know what? How many children would rather be in that fine place without their parents than any place with their parents? I am ashamed at the policies of this president and his administration. I am ashamed not only at the immigration policies, which are terrible, but now we hear that they're going to appoint a new Supreme Court member who's going to make it tough for a woman to have right to choose. This is not the America we know, and this is not the America we love. The America we want is not Trump's America, it's the people's America, and that's what we stand for.
And the federal government was ordered by a federal judge to turn over the youngest children to their parents, to return them to the parents by Monday. This coming Monday is a deadline. They're not going to be able to meet that deadline.
But what nobody's talking about, Peter, is do they know which children belong to which parent?
No, they don't. They did not keep records. They completely botched the handling of this.
Well, what do you
It was done
expect?
in a completely inept manner. They're
terrible.
now talking about doing DNA testing, taking swabs from the children, taking swabs from parents. But if you've already deported some parents back to Guatemala, it's hard to go there with a Q-tip and get a swab.
This was designed to fail. It was designed to fail.
Well, it's designed to basically send a message that the Trump administration will be inhumane.
The chairs are on the table.
If you come here and legally try to attain asylum in this country, you will be met with inhumane treatment from the current administration.
Right.
No two ways about it. They relish in doing this, and the Trump base thoroughly enjoys it because many Trump voters became Trump voters simply because of the bigoted immigration policy that he campaigned on.
Right. Meanwhile, back on White Plains, parking changed, and the meters changed slightly because you now have and then you have this yellow notice, and we'll take a shot of that, and it reads, Peter, want to explain it to us?
Yeah, well, very simply, street meters are now $1.25 an hour. So that's gone up as soon as they can change over the meters to demand that extra quarter in the hour. The rates stay the same in the lots, the municipal lots, and in the parking garages. At some lots, you have to look for a sign because one thing they've done used to be that there were some places where if you came up against the limit, there was, let's say, a 2-hour limit to park in the garage, you had to leave that particular parking lot, for example, and could not come back to that parking lot on the same day. Now that restriction,
just so long as you feed the meter,
has been lifted.
All right.
As long as you feed the meter, you pay $1 an hour in the lot, $1.25 at the meter. Right. One nice thing which they did, which we had reported previously, was that on certain holidays you no longer have to put money in the meters in White Plains.
Street meters.
Street meters.
Street meters. Very important point. And there was a very big and appropriate and timely opening over at Pace. Tell us about it.
Now, John, people, both men and women, in need of legal help for dealing with marital abuse, sexual assault, elder abuse, and other crimes, people who cannot afford to get the legal help, can find the help they need free here in White Plains. And it just got a lot easier to obtain since now you can walk in off the street without an appointment at the Pace Women's Justice Center. At the Elizabeth Haub School of Law at Pace University on North Broadway in White Plains, there was a ribbon cutting June 29th, dedicating new space for the Pace Women's Justice Center. The 4,000 square foot facility includes a walk-in clinic for those in need of legal help to deal with domestic violence, sexual assault, and elder abuse. The center's executive director, Cindy Kanisher, led off a gathering before the ribbon cutting.
People who are walking into our offices and they are unsure of their legal rights and they're afraid for their safety and the safety of their children. They desperately need our help. And this is why we've opened the new clinic. And we will provide a safe place where people can come at a time when they need it most.
We're giving sanction to prejudice. We're giving sanction to misogyny. We're giving sanction to saying what you feel and how you feel it. And don't I think that some mind goes into newspaper offices believing that he's now got a right to even the score. And some man in the privacy of the home that he shares with a woman has a right to even the score if he feels aggrieved. Well, it's not right. What this center does, it says the rule of law is greater than the strength of a human being. It's greater than physical strength. That piece of paper is a protection, and if we don't believe in that, then we have nothing in this society. If the rule of law isn't greater than the power of men and weaponry, then we have nothing. We don't have a civilization. You're standing up for the women that come through your door, and you're standing up for civilization, for rationality, for reasonability, for people to restrain themselves from whatever those instincts are, and to be punished if they cross that line.
It's provided large amount of vital services for thousands of women and families in Westchester and beyond. It's not only a provider of critical legal services, but it's a training ground for many of our students. They get to work at the center under the supervision of practicing attorneys, working on a variety of aspects of cases of clients of the center, and allows them to take whatever they learn at the center and bring it from the classroom out into the real world.
And so this is one of the good things happening in White Plains.
It was another quiet week in Washington, wasn't it, Peter?
In Washington? Oh, hey, it was kind of noisy in White Plains on Tuesday. Fireworks went off despite the weather. It had rained earlier in the day, but they did the fireworks anyway. And I'll tell you, they're setting up for a lot of fireworks in the nation's capital. Trump is not in the nation's capital right now as we speak. Once again, he's at his golf resort in Bedminster, New Jersey, putting $1 million a day into his pockets at our expense for his trip. President Trump told people during the White House 4th of July celebration that he has already made up his mind about a Supreme Court nominee. And so what he told reporters on Air Force One yesterday, that there are as many as 4 finalists, is just another Trump lie. He makes the announcement in primetime Monday, just like a reality show teaser, and he said it's going to be Federal District Court Judge Brett Kavanaugh. But it really doesn't matter who the individual nominated is, because all the candidates were selected by the Federalist Society, the far-right group which prepared a list of 25 candidates for Supreme Court for Trump. All the candidates are far-right activists who passed several litmus tests, including a willingness to overturn Roe v. Wade and a willingness to take away health care coverage from millions of Americans. Trump has hired the disgraced former co-president of Fox News, Bill Shine, to be his deputy White House chief of staff for communications. Fox got rid of Shine when it became public that he was instrumental in covering up the sex and other abuses perpetrated by his boss, Fox News head Roger Ailes, now dead, and helped facilitate Ailes' continued abuse of some Fox employees. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in North Korea negotiating to try to fill in the blanks that Trump left in the joint U.S.-North Korean communique after the meeting with dictator Kim Jong-un. Trump continues to say that the North Koreans no longer pose a nuclear threat, which was false at the time of the summit meeting and is even more false today because U.S. intelligence agencies have evidence that Kim Jong-un is now, as we speak, rapidly expanding North Korea's nuclear program, including expanding facilities to enrich uranium. Former Trump attorney and business fixer Michael Cohen has purged his internet sites of any mention of being Donald Trump's attorney and has removed photos of him with Trump which had been posted online. Cohen has hired a new attorney. Any guesses, John, as to who that might be?
Didn't he have something to do with the, who was that guy?
Lanny
with the
Davis.
problem?
Lanny Davis, who once worked for Bill and Hillary Clinton. There have been numerous reports that Cohen has already been cooperating with the Mueller investigation and has flipped on Trump. When Trump meets with President Vladimir Putin in Russia, he and Putin will be alone for part of the time, maybe just one translator, although Putin does speak English. No note takers, no other U.S. officials, so we'll never know what the two really said and really agreed on. Now, can't you picture it, John? Donald, you can go ahead and build all the Trump hotels and golf courses you want in Russia. But
You're doing a great job.
But you've got to continue torpedoing NATO. You've got to get out of Syria, and you've got to get rid of those U.S. sanctions, which are costing me billions. No need for the secret back-channel communications through the Russian embassy in Washington that son-in-law Jared Kushner tried to set up. They're going to meet in secret, no witnesses.
Well, listen, that's a way of government. We're used to that. But meanwhile, at this point, there are some other things we have to talk about, and one is the heat. It was the hottest week or two I can remember. Look at that. That's the way it was back on the 2nd of July. It was about 94, 95, and it was that way through the week, and it was uncomfortable. The Westchester Attorney General charged this man with a hit-and-run accident in White Plains in November, and that came out yesterday, and it took 2 years to track the suspect down, but they did, and it's just a terrible crime not to stop. The North Boardwalk on Playland was opened, and there is the official opening, and that's how it looks in the next slide, and it was all set to go for the 4th of July.
Now, this was damaged. It sustained hurricane damage, severe damage, in fact. Completely wrecked it. There was a problem getting some federal money, FEMA money, to fix the thing.
But they got it,
they finally got it.
$4.6 million.
And after languishing for several years in a terrible state of disrepair, very quickly now that boardwalk was rebuilt, redone, refinished, and now open.
Right, it's open. It's a great spot. Check it out. And now I just want to share with you a little the week I had last week. We took a trip on the west coast of France to the Bordeaux region, and that is the National Arts Center in Bordeaux at night. And then we traveled down the Gironde, and we are heading at a bridge that was built in the early 1800s by Napoleon Bonaparte. And the trick to this bridge, ladies and gentlemen, is you can only go through it at low tide.
Well, unless you have a very low boat.
Well, that's what we were on, and this is the final approach. It had to be taken twice, and it's really very intriguing seamanship working these boats with the tides.
Sort of looks like the underside of the old Tappan Zee Bridge.
Right. And he makes it.
I heard some applause from the
exactly.
from the people on the
Now,
boat.
this is the Archbishop's Palace in Saint Emilion on one of our cruise trips. It was torn down in the French Revolution because they hated the Archbishop, and that is a view of Saint Emilion in the wine region from the cathedral, and that tall building there is the dungeon. As we pan back, we will move to a shot of a 13th century house right there. All these buildings in Saint Emilion are like you're walking through history. And this is the other side from where you viewed before, up on that parapet there. And this is the Cathedral of Saint Emilion. And that archway there is the place where Saint Emilion dwelt as a hermit, and he is buried there. And that is the square and the church overlooks the region. And this is the interior of the cathedral. It is not too well decorated because it was ransacked and destroyed in the interior, at least, in 1789. And the cathedral
That's a big
dates
pipe
back.
organ that we just saw going
Yes.
by.
And it was very impressive considering the history that this town went through. Then, this is some frescoes that were uncovered. They are dating back about 7 or 8 centuries. This is the Citadel in Bailey, France. The Citadel was built in 1689 by Louis XIV. Sorry about that mistake. It is huge and extremely impressive, and Louis XIV built it in 4 years. Just amazing place, and that's looking back. Now, here's the shot of one of our tours to the wine country, and this is coming up on the Rothschild Chateau, where they make the famous Rothschild wine, and that is the side view of the mansion. And as we come past here, you'll see the front. And there we saw a number of them from the gates. We couldn't go inside, but these are really beautiful places, and one of the great names in wine. This is the last thing I'll share with you, and that is Arachon Bay on the Atlantic in the Bordeaux region, and you're looking at the Western Riviera in France. Lots of movie stars live in those chalets there, and those steaks there are oyster beds, oysters growing in the sun, and I'm eating one right there. It was really a great trip, and I was treated extremely well on the trip by everybody. I was on a private yacht, my private yacht, with 180 other close friends from all over, and it was a very enjoyable time, and I was treated really well by the French people.
It's going to be
we met.
interesting to see how well American tourists are treated in the coming months now that the trade wars are starting to heat up. Just
we will
today, the trade war with China has moved into high gear. China has imposed $34 billion in tariffs against the U.S. effective. That started at midnight. That's when the tariffs went into effect. The U.S. Has imposed $34 million against China, and Trump this morning seems to be threatening to raise that to $500 billion. That means everything made in China imported into this country would go up 25% in cost. It's incredible.
Don't we get computer chips from there?
No, everything, almost everything comes from China in one way or another.
It doesn't make sense, these policies.
No,
it certainly doesn't.
It really doesn't.
Right. But anyway, we tried to make sense of a lot this week, and we are back. Jim Benneroff will be back next week. And
remember to smile at the red light cameras.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And John, remember to smile at our camera. Smile and wave at camera.
John Bailey, Peter Katz for Jim Benneroff. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.